Hi, Susan. How are you today?
Hey, good morning, Ceil. It's nice to see you.
It's good to see you too. I think we both have a beautiful day, a little
Mhm.
chilly, but the sun is out, which we have not had a lot of here in southeastern Pennsylvania. So I'm just happy that it's a beautiful day.
Yeah, it is. And it's fall here, the leaves are changing and it's such a nice time to live in the mountains.
Well, having seen pictures that you've posted on Facebook, I agree with you. We have some beautiful maple trees in my neighborhood, and I went for a run early this morning, and some of them are still gold. We're kind of past peak a little bit here,
hmm
but some of them are just still. It's almost like the sunlight is coming from the tree. That's how yellow they are.
Oh,
It's my
that's
favorite.
lovely.
Yeah,
What a
it's
great image.
beautiful. So we're going to talk about something very specific today.
Yeah, we're going to talk about pillow corners. So we're going to call this Around the Corner Pillow Edition because when I started working on this idea, I thought there's corners and other things besides pillows that people might want help with.
There
So
are.
in the future, we might do a around the corner drapery edition or bedding or more pillows.
Right.
So we're going to talk about pillow corners.
And the details are what make our work so luxurious and so custom.
hmm
So
hmm
I like that it's a detail as specific as the corner of a
Yeah.
pillow.
And just the basics, just a good pillow corner. We're going to, in this podcast, we're going to talk about, more details and adding pleats and doing some interesting things on the corners, but just a basic knife edge pillow.
Right.
A nice, neat corner.
Right. And while we're this is a podcast, we are also going to be using the video portion of this. We know that sometimes it's challenging for Susan, you do such a good job of describing things so that our very visual audience can get a visual of it. But for this particular edition, we decided we're going to use the video. So you can listen on a podcast or you can go to my YouTube channel. And Susan's also going to have the video on her blog so that you can see the things that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm just going to hold up a few things
Yeah.
today, but on the blog, I'll put additional videos, how-to instructions, things you can
Fantastic.
download. So it's going to be a lot of information for something so basic as a
Yes.
corner.
And so small because it's just a portion of the pillow.
That's true. Maybe someday we'll do a whole thing on what's in between the corners.
Okay.
Um, so the basics of getting a square corner on a knife edge or a boxed pillow.
Mm-hmm.
And to help describe the difference between a knife edge and a boxed, right? A knife
Right.
edge is a front and a back that come together, and you can have a knife edge without welt cord or with
Mm-hmm.
welt cord in the seam. And then a boxed pillow has a strip of fabric separating the front and back pieces,
Right.
like a cushion. But you can do those on pillows, and you can have a very small, narrow box, or you can have a really wide boxed
Right.
area. So for making just a basic square knife edge pillow, I think probably the easiest would be no welt cord, front and back. You're
Mm-hmm.
sewing a square, you cut allowing a seam allowance. And on that style pillow, an invisible zipper is really nice.
Yes.
Well, but it's not that challenging just to sew without the welt cord, the front to the back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for all pillows, I will pin in the centers and the corners.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make sure the centers work out and the corners work out and everything in between, you kind of make sure you work it
Adjust.
in.
Right.
Right. So with no welt cord, that's pretty simple, and that's a really
Mm-hmm.
fast way to make pillows. But then if you're adding welt cord, you're sewing the welt cord around those edges. And when you get to a corner, you have to make that turn, right?
Right.
It's a right angle. I love how we have video today.
I know.
I usually do this and nobody sees it. It's a right angle, so you got to come around that right angle. You have to clip the welt cord.
Right.
Some people clip straight. I clip on the bias at an angle.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll, as you're getting to that corner, you'll clip, sew to that corner with the needle down, pivot it all around,
Right.
and keep sewing.
Susan, do you do your welt cord on top of your face fabric or under it?
It depends on the fabrics.
Okay.
Yeah.
How often is that the answer to a
Yeah.
question? It
Yeah.
depends on the fabric.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and your machine. You know, when we
Right.
talked about sewing machine feet, we talked about different types of sewing machines. Um, on just a straight stitch, direct drive machine, you know, it's often I might have to flip it over and put the welt cord under,
Hmm.
and you're sort of sewing blind. You can't really see what you're doing.
Yeah, it takes a little practice to do that
Yeah,
well.
yeah. But I always start out sewing with it on top.
Okay.
I like being able to see what I'm doing. If it starts to take up, if you're sewing with your welt cord on top and you find that the fabric underneath starts to pull up a little bit,
Hmm.
then you need to flip it over and sew it the
Okay.
other way. And then there is, so that's making a right angle. And then there's dog ears and
Yeah.
tapered corners. And that's when you stuff a pillow, you've made that perfectly, you got your corners perfectly square, and then you stuff your pillow and they're all smushy and they have little dog ears hanging
Hmm.
off, right? That's why they're called dog ears, little dog
I
ears.
do love that visual.
That's an old-fashioned thing. It's been around my whole career. I don't know where the dog ears started, but um, you can taper off the end, so you're actually not sewing to a right angle.
Hmm.
It's very slight, and how much you taper, it's up to you, but there are tapering templates, which make it
Yes.
really easy. The Home Sewing Depot has a really nice one that's a smaller size. And you
Hmm.
can just set it right down on there. You can fold your pillow into quarters and cut and mark all of them at the same time.
Oh, that's really
Yeah.
productive and effective, I
Yeah.
think.
So it's
Efficient.
about 3 inches from each corner, it'll start to taper in.
Okay.
And that when it's stuffed, you can't tell it's tapered. It looks like a square corner. But it fills in better because you sort of cut some of that corner away.
Hmm.
Now there's pros and cons to tapering and not tapering. If you're working with something like a plaid or a stripe and you cut away that taper, that's obvious.
Right.
You know, you're not cutting on that square corner of the check or the plaid. So it might not use it for that. And it has to do with the pillow forms you're using. If you're
Yes.
using polyester pillow forms, they don't fill the corners as nicely as down or
Right.
in feather. And also it depends on the look you want. Some people like pointy corners.
Hmm.
Some people don't like pointy corners. So, and both are right. It's not that one is superior over the
Right.
other.
It's a matter of taste and what your client is looking for.
So let's take a poll. Who likes pointy corners? I do.
I do. I very rarely taper my corners. I have a tapering template and I have used it for my designers who prefer that. It is one of those questions I always ask
Yeah.
because I'm so accustomed to how I make them and I let them know that's my standard, but these are custom. So please tell me what you want.
Yeah. And I'll put up a photo of a tapered corner and a square
Okay, perfect.
pillow with the same pillow form so that that you can see. So I'm writing myself a note not to forget to put up a photo on the blog.
So people are getting a behind the scenes of how the podcast works right now.
Yeah. I will admit, audience, that sometimes I have to have Ceil send me the podcast before I write the blog because I forgot what I said.
What did I say I was going to do? And I take notes as well while we're doing it about things like you mentioned Home Sewing Depot. So now I want to remember to put a link to the Home Sewing Depot in the show notes. So those are
Yeah,
things.
perfect.
So if you see us looking off to the side or doing something, you know we're doing what we normally do during the podcast.
It's live.
Exactly.
So that's just some tips for getting your square corners. And I've gotten in the habit now of instead of pinning my corners, so let's say I'm making a knife edge pillow with welt cord.
Mm-hmm.
You can sew and make your welt cord all in one step.
Right.
For a lot of decorative pillows where I'm not using the walking foot machine, I'm not doing that. I'm going to sew my
Mm-hmm.
welt cord and then sew it on. And after it's sewn on, I'm clipping those corners. I'll mark the center of each side of the pillow, and then I'll sew each corner instead of pinning each corner. And
Okay.
I have a sewing machine that has auto thread cutting
Mm-hmm.
and auto backstitch. So I can literally put the corners underneath the sewing machine with the welt cord foot and sew each corner.
Okay.
And then when I go to sew the rest of the pillow, I know it's done. I don't have to
Right.
worry about getting that. I can always, I can check to make sure it's sewn nicely. I don't have to worry about it, about the fabric growing and going past that corner.
Right.
So that's, and even if you don't have auto thread cutting, it's not that hard to clip those threads and sew those 4 corners first.
No, it's not, Susan. And you can adjust any take up or growth or anything else that we all know goes on in between each corner instead of getting to the 3rd corner and going, oh, darn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also gives you a visual of which side of your pillow needs attention.
Yes.
So if you sew all your 4 corners and the back piece that doesn't have the welt cord is bigger, looks greater than, then you want to have that underneath when you're sewing.
Right. And it's not unusual for that to happen because you've sewn a welt cord on, so there's some take up. Right.
Yeah, right. If by chance you stretched the fabric when you sewed the welt cord on and you sewed all your 4 corners and you found that the welt cord side's a little bigger, so with that under and the fabric on top. Yeah. So whatever's bigger needs to be under. So that on a regular straight stitch machine. If you're working on a walking foot, you probably won't have those problems.
Right.
And so that's my tip for getting those corners sewn. And then if you mark the centers, so you sew all your 4 corners, your centers are marked, put a pin at each center, and then you're sewing from corner to center, center to corner, corner to center, center to corner. And it should work out pretty perfect.
Yeah. So
that's getting basic pillows, right? And tapered corners. Now we can talk about doing some fun things with corners. It doesn't have to always be a square corner.
Right.
You can have gathered, pleated, Turkish corners, boxed with a combination of those things. So the first one I'm just going to show you is a gathered corner, and that one's quite simple. It's just a matter of taking a needle and thread, and I've marked 2 inches down from each side, and then just gather up your little corner there, and you'll tie that off. So you have this little gathered corner, and it's really subtle.
It is, and it's really sweet.
And it looks something like that.
Nice.
When you add a welt cord.
Okay.
You can also gather up the corner after the welt cord is sewn on. So you can make a square pillow, and if you're doing that, stop and start your welt cord in the corner. You don't have to join the welt cord. It'll be hidden. And then with the pillow with the front and back together, then you can do this gathering stitch. And I like to wrap it around like this, and tie it off. And then when you turn it right side out, you also have this pretty gathered corner, but the welt cord is pulled in.
Okay.
So instead of the welt cord going to the outside of the corner,
it goes inside.
It goes inside the corner. So I'll put a picture of the 2 on the blog. And that's a fast and easy way to create a gathered corner pillow because, the welt cord's hidden. You don't have to join the welt cord.
Right.
And it looks kind of nice to have that welt cord sort of dive into the gathers. So there's 2 options for a gathered corner pillow. And just for fun, I'll share with you that my mom and I, when we worked together, I don't know who came up with the name of this, but I believe she did. She called this a chicken rear end. It looks like a little.
I love that.
It looks like a little chicken butt. So, so when I would have a purchase order, I would tell Mom, for our gathered corner pillow, I'd tell Mom, make a chicken rear end pillow, and she knew exactly what I was talking about.
Exactly. I love that.
And then there's a center seam boxed pillow. So that was a gathered corner. And I thought I had a sample of a center seam box, but I don't. But anyway, that's where you will sew. I'll just use this corner. You'll turn the edges together and you'll sew across. And then when you open the pillow up, you have
I just happen to have, that is what I
Do you have one? Oh, there you go. See?
And I use the dreaded twist cord.
Oh,
on mine.
Very nice.
I can't tell from my camera. I might be off just a little bit. I didn't want to do a Turkish corner on this one because this fabric is very bulky and I didn't want all that material behind there. So I just did what you just showed. And then I trimmed off all the excess and then put my welt cord on.
Yeah, and this is, if you're doing a pillow without welt cord, you can put the front and back pieces together and sew them all, open that up, sew it all at one trip.
Right.
But if you're using welt cord, you have to sew each one individually. And then
Right.
again, it's that lining up that seam so the two seams stay together. And again, I would
Yes.
go and sew those. So on the welt cord,
Mm-hmm.
sew each one of those corners, getting those seams lined up before I sew the rest of the pillow.
That's a really smart way to do that. I like that.
And I haven't made one of those in a long time. You see a lot of cushions made
Mm-hmm.
with a center seam. But it gives you how much you sew determines how thick the pillow is going to be.
Exactly.
So you might have to practice a little bit with the size of your seams, maybe on a scrap of lining to figure out exactly what you want that to be. And we'll talk about pillow forms coming up shortly.
Okay.
So that's a center seam. You can do that with or without welt cord. And then there's Turkish corners. And I have a Turkish corner pillow here. So there's a Turkish
Oh, that's so pretty.
corner.
I
Isn't that
do
pretty?
love that look. Yes.
And I really like to do Turkish corners on, if possible. I don't always dictate what fabrics get to use, but like a solid or just a textured fabric like this, because it gets lost in a print.
I agree with you.
It
Yeah.
doesn't show up well. So if you're doing solid pillows, solid colors, or just a texture, then adding these details, the shadows and the light, make it show up, and it's so pretty. So here's how you do a Turkish corner. So here's a little example of what it looks like before you add the welt cord. And I have a little sample here. I cut off a triangle that was like that.
Okay.
It was 2 inches from each corner, so it's measure over 2 inches. And I'm going to put a little video up on the website of how to do this on the blog. So that's 2 inches. I mark the center, and each one of these edges goes to the center and then back.
Perfect.
Okay, there we go, like that. And then this one comes over to the center and back. And there's that little Turkish corner.
And so, Susan, if you go further than 2 inches, does that create a deeper corner just like?
Yeah, so for example, there's going over 3 inches corner, and that's going over 2 inches from the corner.
And that's a significant difference.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
And you can manipulate this idea of a Turkish corner. Some people will fold it so it's not that much of a triangle look, and it's more of a they push the ends down so it's more of a straight like that look. And that's how
I've seen both.
That's how you line up the edges. Whether you have them flush around the edge like that, or you have it pulled down a little bit, which I might be able to do here with this one. Like if I had that sticking out,
that creates a tighter.
It makes it tighter. Yes.
Okay.
So it'll look more like that.
Perfect.
And so it just depends. If you're not sure, make some samples. And you can label them and write on them and say, okay, that's for that one, and that's for that one. And
Susan, I think that's a really good point. I've done samples of things when I'm in the moment of making something and haven't always held on to them. And then the next time, and we know that we don't, those of us who are custom workrooms don't do the same thing over and over again.
Right.
But it does not make sense to do the same samples over and over again.
And it might depend on how thick you want the pillow to be. And if you're working on on pillows that are going to leather sofa, for example, you want a fatter pillow so it'll stay and not slide off.
Right.
So it depends on the look that you're going for the Turkish corner. So that's the basics of a Turkish or pleated corner. And so I was thinking about, well, what can I do with a Turkish corner that would be different? And some things I have done is add a flange in the edge, which is really, really pretty, especially if you pleat it at the corner.
You showed that at the custom workroom weekend a few years back, and I have been infatuated with that corner ever since. And I've only had like 1 or 2 opportunities to make anything.
Oh yeah, that was
I love that.
Oh, I'll have to put a link to that instruction. That was the bow tie pleat on the corner.
I love that.
Okay, I'll make a note to There'll be a lot of instructions included on this
Yes.
podcast. But even if you have just a Turkish corner like this and you sew in the flat flange, if you add a pleat, or you do a split flange, and that's my preferred because that's the easiest one.
And that's something I have a picture of. Let me get the right
Oh,
camera.
see, there
So
you
there's a
go.
split
There's a
flange.
split flange, but
These
imagine that
are easy
with that.
I know. I'm
That'll
thinking
look really
I might
pretty.
have to take this pillow apart and redo it and do corners.
So you would just, and you do have to sort of figure out the size it needs to be, because on your pillow, you knew the finished size of the pillow. Well, now this is
Yes.
going to be smaller than
Yes.
the square that you cut. So that little flange can just divide right there on that pleated corner. It's adorable.
It really is. I love that.
I don't have a picture to show you. You have to imagine it, but I'll put a picture on the blog though.
Okay.
Because the thing is, that's kind of fun with making samples when we're talking about ideas like this, is you only need to make one corner.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to make a whole pillow. You can make one corner. You can smush that down on a pillow form, take a picture of it, and now you have your example to show your customers.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, more notes. So as I was thinking about, so did make a Turkish corner pillow. This one is stuffed a little tight because it's the amount of fabric I had and the size pillow I had. But some people like that stuffed really tight. And this would be a great back cushion on a sofa.
That's what I was thinking. That firmness of that and the shape of it are a good back cushion.
And you do, when you start taking out these corners, you do get a rounded edge on the pillow, so you don't have these sharp knife edge dog ears and things. Right. So it is a much more rounded shape, not a square shape.
Right.
So if you wanted a square boxed pillow, you would go back to making a box pillow with just that strip of fabric. And I didn't really talk about that when we were talking about the knife edge pillow. The same thing when you're making a boxed pillow is sewing those corners.
Yeah.
So I'll sew the boxing strip on to the one piece and then line up all those corners square and sew those on the opposite side and then sew in between to make sure that those corners, because on a box pillow, you really want your corners to line up.
Yes. It's really important.
Or your corner will twist a little bit.
That I think was my biggest challenge in the first couple of cushions that I made. And for any of our listeners who are in the UK, you call them cushions, we call them pillows. And what we call cushions, I'm not even sure. We'll have to have someone chime in and let us know.
They call pillows toss cushions.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
I do too. So I throw them at you.
But I feel like it took me a while to get that. And I kind of wish I had known the idea of sewing the corners first, because I think it would have saved me some time in the beginning.
Yeah. And even, or just pinning them or something, you want to make sure that you end up at your corner on the boxing strip that's exactly opposite of the other side.
Right.
So then I thought, well, what if I combined a Turkish corner and a boxed pillow? Now, I hadn't seen that before.
No, I haven't either.
So I don't know, it's probably been done because sewing is not anything new. But so I did that and I made a Turkish boxed pillow. Isn't that pretty?
I love that.
Now this one's pretty thick. It's about 6 inches.
Yeah.
Right here on the work table, I can measure it. 5.5 to 6 inches thick. But if this were sitting on a leather sofa, this one can stand up by itself and not fall over.
And not fall over.
So that's actually a benefit. It would also be a pretty sort of like an ottoman top, but
it would be.
And this could be smaller too. This is 2 inches, so this could be 1.5 inches or 1 inch.
Or it could be beautiful tape that you apply to it.
I know. Oh, I want to do that. Yeah,
that would be gorgeous.
Tapes right here. That would be really pretty.
Wow. All right, I lost it for a minute because I started like designing in my head. But in looking at that, Susan, you mentioned the other one being more of a back cushion. That's much more substance. And we talked about forms. And what adjustment do you have to make to put forms into these?
Right. Yeah. So this has a knife edge form in it. that has the corners shoved in.
Okay.
Okay. And I cut the front and back pieces 18,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a 19-inch pillow in here.
Now, I would have thought it would be much
It's
bigger,
not
and it
bigger.
was as simple as poking those corners in.
I think that's right. In fact,
Okay.
I could unzip it and find out. If anybody
Did
wants
it?
to see the zipper, that's another thing that's interesting about this too
Oh,
is
it is.
I took the zipper around the edges
Okay.
because if you're trying to put the zipper between these Turkish corners, it's not a very, very big opening.
You're right.
And there's no corner on this boxing. It just goes around.
Mm-hmm.
So I just let the zipper go around. And it's in the seam
Okay.
next to the welt cord. And I sew my zippers with the welt cord foot. And
Okay.
then the last pass, which is this top stitching here,
Mm-hmm.
that is sewn with a skinny foot.
Okay.
And oh, here's the label. Let's see what size pillow.
You don't take your labels off?
No.
I'm teasing.
It's a 19 by 19 pillow.
Okay.
So I was right.
Wow. So that I would have thought it would be like significantly larger. So
No.
that is really good to know.
Yeah, the pillow ends up getting so small when you make those Turkish corners.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't take the labels off because if it's mine, I do. But when you're
Okay.
selling pillows and you have new pillow forms, your customer needs.
They do. And
It's like this. It's like the warning labels on Roman shades.
exactly.
Right? It's the same thing. They need to know that they have new pillow forms that don't have bed bugs in them, and
Yes.
they weren't borrowed from somebody or used leftover.
Prior to.
Yeah.
It's a joke in our family. One of my aunts, who's not that much older than I am, was babysitting some of my cousins, and she told them they could never take the labels off the pillow cushions because the pillow police,
The police
would
would come and
after
get
them. Yes.
That's
So no,
hilarious.
I do not take them off of my clients' pillows. But I do take them off of my own.
So because I love that pillow so much, I'm going to write an article and submit it for Drapery and Design Digital Digest.
Fantastic.
So now as one of the publishers, Ceil, you can't turn me down.
No, I can't. You publicly, no, and I would not turn it down, but you're right. I can't do
So
it
hopefully
now.
that'll be in the December issue.
Fantastic.
And a few more things. This is another big boxed pillow. And it also has a zipper in the seam here, like that. And this one doesn't have a square pillow form. It has a knife edge pillow form. You just shove in those corners.
Tucked in.
Now for this pillow, you need to add on to your pillow form because this doesn't have those Turkish corners. So I've got the full face.
Right.
So the face of the pillow, the finished size, plus your boxing size, plus an inch.
Okay.
So I don't remember what size this is. It looks like it's about an 18-inch finish. So it'd be 18 inches plus 2-inch boxing plus an inch.
Plus an inch. Okay.
So that would have a 21-inch form.
Okay.
And this is a down form and it's not stuffed really tight. I like my pillows a little more squishy. But another thing I wanted to show you on these box pillows is some fun things you can do. You can just take the corners, pinch it in, add a button.
Oh, I love that. That
could be a
looks
covered
so
button.
sweet.
This is a little copper button. But yeah, so you can just get this really pretty detail. It kind of looks like a Turkish corner. It has a little pleat there, but it's nothing more than a button.
I love that. And something like that, you could just do the top two corners and not the bottom.
Sure.
So it could sit up and sit well on a sofa or a chair.
I would have to do all four though, because I'd walk into the client's home on my next visit and it would be upside down.
You know what? That
is drive me crazy.
That is a really good point, and I see that all the time. The zippers up on the top, and I've been in pillows I didn't even make, and I just go over and I turn them because that drives me insane to see that.
I've also done styles like this where you make an encased cord, which is a welt cord where the seam is on the inside, so it's like ties, and you put that into the seam, and then you can tie like a bow there.
Oh, pretty.
And that looks really nice. You could do the same thing with tassels. You could put cord tassel on each corner and then bring them together and tie a cord tassel.
Right, right.
It's a really quick and easy way to update a boxed pillow
Hmm.
and give it just a little more something special there. The
And it,
ties would be pretty too. Imagine like a linen pillow with some flat linen ties that you just tied in a
yes,
knot on the corner and just let them sort of be floppy.
right.
That'd be really pretty.
It really is amazing how much creativity you can put into a corner. We're talking about one part
Around the
of the
corner.
pillow.
So for, we talked a little bit about pillow forms. You need to size up for the box pillows. I usually add an inch bit greater for just knife edge pillows to fill out those corners. Some people
Hmm.
like more, and it depends on your pillow supplier and how full they're stuffed and the look that you're going for and
Hmm.
what your customer wants. So
Yeah.
sometimes you need to get the pillow forms first.
I generally do, Susan, just because, and I generally use the same supplier most of the time, but occasionally, and especially in this year when supplies are not as readily available,
Mhm.
I wait until I have them just to be on the safe side.
Yeah. And for welt cord, I do get asked a lot which welt cord I use,
Hmm.
whether a soft welt cord or firm welt cord. And for a boxed pillow, I kind of like the firm welt cord. For a standard
Agreed.
knife edge pillow, I usually use a soft welt cord.
Right.
And I like a 1/4 inch welt cord. So this, the Turkish Corner box pillow, this one has a 1/4 inch firm welt cord.
Right. It's enough to be noticeable, but it's
Mhm.
not so big that it takes over.
Yeah, and I think we're running out of time, but one more
We
tip
are.
is
Okay.
when you're sewing, your welt cord foot is a great thing to have. We talked about that on our last podcast about feet.
Hmm.
And to get close to the welt cord, you make it with one size foot, and then you go down a size on your last trip of sewing, and that snugs it up nice and neat.
And then you don't see any stitches
Don't see
afterwards.
any stitches.
Oh, Susan, you really called it. There's our bell. We are out of time. So
Wow.
you know what? It's so funny because we talk about what topics we want to cover on the
Mhm.
podcast. And I'm always amazed at how quickly you can come up with topics. But if you had said to me a couple months ago, we're going to do a whole 30 minutes on the corner of pillows, I would have been like, yeah, we're going to have to stretch that one, but I'm sure we could actually keep going on this. So I love that this is the pillow edition and that
Yes.
we will think about corners for other uh, projects that we work on in our workroom. But this was really fun. And I have to say, I will be making some new pillows in the next couple of weeks.
Oh,
I'm excited. I'm looking
fantastic. So
forward to it.
I invite everyone to visit the Workroom Tech blog at workroomtech.com.
There will be a link in the show notes that'll take you
Okay,
there.
and that's where I follow up with all the things we talk about and where I can add more visuals for you to see.
Terrific. Oh, Susan, this was fun. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Ceil. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, bye.